Hey, what's up, everyone? James here from Supra. Welcome to another edition of the Super dApp Builders series. I'm excited to have with me Brady Gentile, the co founder and CEO of Bonzo Finance Labs. Brady, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, James, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Great to dig into what Bonzo Finance are doing. But before we do, just give us a quick rundown about who you are and how you got into Web3.
Yeah, absolutely. So, started my Web3 journey working at the Hedera public network in a director of product marketing capacity. Joined about 5.5, 6 years ago now, and helped them with building out their developer ecosystem, DeFi ecosystems, NFT ecosystems, all of the sort of like primitives that are needed for a layer one EVM based network to be successful and engaging all of the different types of users that are participating. At the beginning of this year, actually departed from Hedera because I saw a gap that existed in the DeFi ecosystem on the network where lending and borrowing was something that was much needed, and worked together to build a team of 5 people and build an Aave based lending protocol called Bonzo Finance.
You've been around for a very long time. You were one of the key members in bringing Hedera Hashgraph to the world. Obviously, Hedera are a very popular ecosystem. A lot of people know about them. Let's go further back. How did you get into Web3? How did you first hear about the technology? And where were you when you heard about it that sucked you in full time?
Yeah, so the first time I heard about Web3 tech was about Bitcoin. I actually started my career at a distributed database company called DataStax. And there was a bunch of incredibly bright engineers that worked there on distributed systems. And I talked to a couple engineers at that time. This was probably back in like 2013, and they had brought up this concept of Bitcoin. And we had this huge whiteboard in that room, and they were trying to explain how exactly Bitcoin worked and its decentralized nature and proof of work. And was very early in my career, but trying to grasp and understand it. And from that point on, year after year, I continued to keep hearing more and more about Bitcoin and decentralized technology. And then eventually Ethereum came around, where you had this programmability layer for decentralized systems. Um, After working at DataStax and distributed systems, I switched over to a company called Cloudflare for security. And between experience in distributed systems and security, it's about as close as you could get, especially back in 2017, 2018, to blockchain technology. It's a combination of both of those, plus obviously decentralization as well. And I had a manager from my first job who reached out because he had joined the Hedera network as a CMO and said that he's building out a team. And at that point in time, I had been researching Ethereum and was very interested in it just as my own personal hobby, and definitely wanted to get in the space and saw the space as something that was going to be massive and transformational with regards to our financial system. And so joined him over at Hedera and then haven't looked back since.
Sup everyone, James here from Supra, and I want to remind you real quick about the Super dApp Showdown. If you're looking to deploy a dApp on Supra's L1, you should enter the Super dApp Showdown because you could win yourself a slice of the $100 million ecosystem fund. In addition, you could get exposure to over 500,000 verified KYC users in our ecosystem, and in addition to that, you could appear on the Killer Whales TV show. That's the TV show where you present your dApp to VCs in the Web3 ecosystem, and that gets streamed on TV to over 600 million homes around the world on leading streaming services. All you got to do is head on over to supra.com/showdown, enter your details. We'd love to feature you, and we'd love to check you out in season 1 of the Super dApp Showdown. So head on over to that website and enter as soon as you can. Wow, to have that kind of evolution from standard databasing technology into decentralization and then right into Web3, that's a really natural progression. I believe
Yeah.
those were actually in the Valley, San Francisco. I'm not sure if it was the Bay Area, but obviously companies like Cloudflare in San Francisco. Are you still there at the hub of the global technology industry?
So I was in San Francisco for about 12 years and was doing the whole startup thing. I've always been deeply interested in technology. literally dreamt of the idea of being able to go through a similar experience as when the internet came around in 2000s. I was 10 at the time, so was not an adult, wasn't able to really participate in that, and feel incredibly grateful and lucky that this new revolution of blockchain technology and decentralized finance has spun up with the right timing. And then also, like you said, having the experience of distributed systems and security combined, I think just got very lucky having had that experience before and being able to participate in this.
And what about the industry now? San Francisco is such a hub of startups, of ideas, of venture capital. How do they feel about this industry, Web3 in general? Do you still have your finger on the pulse of that community and what their feeling is towards our industry, which is obviously a lot more decentralized and global?
Yeah, so I did forget to mention, so I'm in New York now for the
Okay.
last couple of years or so. So I've seen sort of New York and San Francisco as two pretty big hubs that are participating in tech. What I found is that I see New York as becoming really a massive hub for Web3 related tech, much more so than I saw in San Francisco. That's not to say that Web3 businesses and innovators aren't in San Francisco as well, but I think New York has particularly attracted Web3 because it's such a global hub, probably top five city for law, finance, technology, and also art. And when you think about the Web3 space, especially with NFTs and other things, it really captures all four of those. And so every time I go to a coffee shop here or it's a party or whatever, there's always someone who's typically doing something in the Web3 space, which I find pretty cool. And it's obviously a very collaborative space as well. People love being able to strike up conversation and talk about what they're building.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've actually never considered New York to be such an important hub for Web3, but of course, I know so many people are there. I know Meltem Demirors, Anthony Pompliano, last I checked, was in New York. And so that makes a lot of sense, actually. All right, we've gone through your history, where you're at now. Pretty exciting that you're in New York City, which means that I need to make up a meeting with you next time I'm in the Big Apple. But let's talk about what you're up to right now. Bonzo Finance, you guys have already accomplished so much. You have grown to a point where there's a lot of interest in what you guys are up to. Give us the elevator pitch for someone who's watching or listening right now who have never heard about Bonzo Finance. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so Bonzo Finance is a decentralized lending protocol. And what that means is if you're holding crypto assets on a blockchain network and you want to be able to put that money, those crypto assets to work, you can provide them to a lending protocol to be lent out to other people to borrow. And those borrowers pay an interest rate, and you can earn passive income just for providing your assets to this protocol. In addition to that, you can, after providing your assets to the protocol as collateral, borrow assets against that collateral that you've provided. So it's called an over collateralized lending protocol. And it is based on Aave. So Aave is the foundation of our code base. Aave is one of the most utilized lending protocols across the Web3 space. It's been battle tested economically and technically and has been very successful. It's limited to some of the top networks that exist across Web3. And what we're doing is taking some of that programmability and accessibility of lending and borrowing and bringing it to other networks like Hedera, like Supra, which they're not integrated into. And then also actually layering new functionality in on top of that as well. Lending protocols are uniquely set up to where they act as this layer of liquidity whereby in DeFi ecosystems, you can actually build more complex DeFi applications on top of a lending protocol base that takes advantage of the liquidity that's found in that lending protocol. So doing things like perpetuals and derivatives, for example, would utilize the liquidity that's found at the lending protocol base layer.
Yeah, so you guys are currently deployed on the Hedera network. you are a protocol that can be deployed on a number of networks. Is it Supra next, or do you have any other networks that you're looking to deploy on? Are you on more than Hedera at the moment? What's the current situation of where the protocol is available?
Yeah, so we're currently on Hedera right now, and the protocol is using Supra's oracles for price feeds. So it's been awesome working with the Supra team these past 6 months, setting up Oracle price feeds on the Hedera network for Bonzo. We are looking to expand Bonzo beyond Hedera, and having worked with the Supra team previously, just stellar people. It feels like they know what they're doing with regards to building a community, addressing their developer ecosystem, doing things like this podcast has been awesome. And you guys are launching a EVM layer one network, and the testnet for that goes live in October. And so we're really excited to be able to start playing around on testnet, deploying Bonzo Finance contracts and adapting them to Super ZVM, and really seeing where that takes us. We are exploring other chains as well. There's a few categories of things that we are trying to identify when it comes to expansion. And one of them is looking at, hey, what does the retail ecosystem and institutional ecosystem look like on a chain that we would potentially expand to? And when you look at Supra, they've done an amazing job of attracting retail focused users to your offering. I think you have, last I checked, around 400 or 500,000 verified retail users that have been engaged through the Quests programs and very vocal on social media. And having a large sort of total addressable market is really important. And then additionally, looking at where gaps exist in these potential networks that we would expand to. And Super's a new network that's starting to grow, and it's looking for new applications that solve very foundational problems that exist in DeFi ecosystems. Lending and borrowing is definitely one of those things that is just a staple requirement for a successful DeFi ecosystem. And that doesn't exist yet today for Super's network. And so being able to jump in and support Supra by having a lending protocol there, seems like a really good opportunity. It's something we're really excited about exploring.
Yeah, and the same goes for us. We're really excited to welcome Bonzo Finance onto Supra's L1. Talk to us a little bit about deploying a protocol onto another L1. Okay, so it's EVM. You guys are EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine. Now, you were a fork of Aave. You have your protocol, you have your code base, you deploy onto Hedera. That deployment onto Supra, would it be a simple thing depending on the structure and the architecture of Supra, how easy it would be for you guys to plug and play? Do you foresee such a deployment as an easy thing, or is it really important an intricate sort of process to take your code base and deploy it onto an entirely new network? Take us through some of the challenges that you might face and how easy a process it's going to be.
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's a whole bunch of networks that are EVM based or Move VM based, or there's even Solana's VM as well. And when you start to look at expansion of a protocol across different chains that are EVM compatible, in this case, there's definitely certain nuances sometimes on each chain that is specific to that chain that requires you to think through adapting whatever it is that you've built to the specifics of that chain. And for example, on Hedera, when we forked Aave, brought it over to Hedera's network, there were a couple nuances. It is an EVM based network, but Hedera also offers a native token service, and the entire ecosystem uses this native token service. It integrates into the EVM, but it did create this opportunity for us to have to adapt the protocol to work with the rest of the ecosystem and the assets that are Hedera token service based assets. And we were able to figure that out. And then some small different nuances with the EVM as well, and just making sure that everything works properly on Hedera the way that it should. What we anticipate with expansion with Supra is there might be certain small nuances with regards to Supra's EVM and things that we would adapt. Ultimately, a lot of it, I think, is unchanged, but it's really important to try to dive deep and really understand, hey, what's different about this network? And not only what's different, but maybe there's unique differentiators for that network as well that allows us to build something that is unique for that network. For Hedera's network, it was support for the token service and a point system that we were able to do that was on-chain inscriptions. For Supra, we're excited to dive in and really understand maybe there's something unique here that we can bring to the table with regards to our offering. One thing I do really like too about Supra is you guys have done a ton of work integrating some native functionalities into the network itself. There's random verifiable number generator, there's cross-chain messaging that's built into Supra, and obviously oracles are built into Supra as well. And having those tight integrations, I think, makes things even easier for builders to be able to adapt those integrations into whatever it is that they're building. And we're really excited to explore what those integrations are and the types of things that we can do with them.
Yeah, that's exactly why we as a team are so excited about what we've built, because it's a full stack. It's a fully vertically integrated stack of products available to those that deploy. So, yeah, man, I think there's a lot to be explored here. And of course, it's still early days for us. We're about to launch testnet. We can't wait to hear your experience. Let's talk about the features and products that you guys have available to your users. You guys have recently been testing liquidation bots and flash loans. Give us a little behind the scenes look at how those kind of tools and what kind of impact you expect them to have once they're live, if they're not live already.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that we're thinking about Bonzo is that it really is an ecosystem that we're building out. And in order for the protocol to remain healthy and for people who are lending assets to remain solvent, there is this aspect of liquidations that has to take place. If collateral that you supply to the protocol and borrow against ends up, for example, dropping below a certain value and you've borrowed assets against it, in order to keep the entire protocol healthy, it requires a liquidation of that protocol, of that asset. What we have is these liquidation bots that anybody can operate in order to perform liquidations when they are needed to take place. And people who are operating a liquidation bot and performing the service, they receive a reward for doing so, for helping keep the protocol safe and again, creditors whole. Building out tutorials and template contracts and template bots for people to use and building out our developer ecosystem is really important. We want to have a number of people participating on that front to try and keep things healthy. Another aspect of liquidation bots in many cases is using a functionality called flash loans. And what flash loans are is the ability for a developer to come in and build a smart contract that essentially borrows any amount of an asset that exists in a Bonzo liquidity pool, use that asset for some type of transaction. Maybe it's arbitrage between two decentralized exchanges, or using it for the liquidation bot to participate in its activities, and then repay the loan, and doing so all within a single transaction, or otherwise known as an atomic transaction. And if someone goes and builds that contract to perform this flash loan, let's say the transaction doesn't work, they aren't able to repay the loan, basically everything just reverses. So it's a very safe way to be able to borrow larger amounts of capital without putting up collateral and performing various types of activities that help create greater market efficiencies in the case of arbitrage, or also keeping the protocol safe in the case of liquidation bot type activity. And there's a whole range of other things that folks can do too, but those are like the sort of foundational things that someone might use flash loans for.
All right, nice. Yeah, nice and intriguing products for people that want to make use of a really important lending protocol. Those are going to be utilized in a big way by your users. Talking about users, how about the DAO? How's it coming along? How do you guys envision community governance shaping the future of the protocol? And yeah, let's start there. Talk to us about how the DAO is coming along and how you envision community governance within Bonzo.
Yeah, absolutely. So the native token for the Bonzo Finance protocol does act as a governance token. And widespread distribution of this token across many community members is really important. It's really a community owned and directed protocol. And when you're first launching a decentralized protocol, things are going to start out looking more centralized and far more centralized than they should on a long timeline. So a lot of the decision making at the onset is more centralized. The team at Bonzo Finance Labs that's contributing to its development are making sort of critical decisions. As time goes on and the protocol evolves, it moves further and further towards greater decentralization. And that includes things like the formation of the Bonzo Finance DAO, which is looking to launch in early 2025, leading up to the launch of Bonzo Finance DAO, where people can use the native protocol token to create proposals and vote on various proposals. We're trying to operate in a way that is laying a solid foundation for when the DAO does go live. So critical decisions that we make, although they are maybe a little bit more centralized at first, we're documenting them as proposals, going through a voting process to make sure that they go through, making that information public. Basically, we want to be able to have these processes in place so that by the time the DAO does come online, it's going to be ready for users to be able to adopt, and we can increase that level of decentralization for the protocol.
Yeah, and I know that you personally are very passionate about decentralization. What lessons have you learned from other DAOs in the space?
Yeah, I think there's a good example with recently Compound, which is another lending protocol that's in the
Yeah.
space. They went through a situation with regards to DAO governance where it was a governance attack in a sense, where there was a organization that was separate from Compound that uh, put up a proposal and voted on an allocation of Compound's treasury being provided to this third party for some liquid staking type functionality that they wanted to operate. And I think looking at that, it was a big part of it is having a widespread distribution of this governance token and ensuring that there's fairness across the board and there's no centralization pockets of power where you can have an attack like that. It being just a really important aspect of operating a decentralized protocol, and especially one that's governed by a DAO. And one of the learnings from that is just trying to ensure that there aren't those pockets of centralized power. There aren't large token holders that individually can massively affect negative outcomes for the protocol. And just decentralization from that perspective is definitely really important.
How would you protect against whales? I've seen a lot of whales in DAO governance whereby big token holders come along and in essence, they have such a weighty vote that they can almost sway treasury funds directly towards wherever they want them to go. Is that purely just examples of more centralized protocols, or is that just a problem that needs to be overcome by decentralized protocols? How do you overcome those kind of challenges?
Yeah, I think it can be a little bit of both. And if you aren't careful about your tokenomics and careful about how you're distributing tokens across the entirety of the ecosystem, you can end up in a place where there's large token holders that have a concentration of power. But there's also ways of mitigating that, to your point. What we've seen is there's delegation. And imagine a scenario where you do have maybe one entity or one individual that is a very large token holder that can sway these votes in the ways that they want. One of the ways of mitigating that is requiring that they actually delegate some of their tokens to other organizations that have their own independent way of thinking. And I think an example of that, if I'm recalling correctly, was Uniswap and A16Z. I think A16Z had a pretty hefty investment in Uniswap and is holding Uni tokens. And what they ended up doing actually is delegating those tokens to other outside independent blockchain groups. One of them was a university blockchain group. I forget which university it was specifically, but the individuals that were part of that group, they were able to then use that delegation of tokens to be able to independently vote on various proposals for the Uniswap protocol. And I do see delegation as being one really good way of mitigating that concentration of power issue. And they actually did, in one of the proposals, they voted against what A16Z had voted for at that time as well. So a good proof point of saying that system does work. They were voting in their own interest versus just going along with what A16Z wanted to do.
Yeah, perfect example of real decentralization. And that's what these DAOs are all about. They're about new social experiments. And I love that. So, looking forward to seeing how the Bonzo DAO performs and how the future of your protocol operates under its guidance, man. Exciting times. And coming from someone so passionate about decentralization, this is going to be really cool to see.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, we're super excited.
Okay, so talking about products and features, Bonzo NFTs, those have come with a pretty interesting utility. They include things like token airdrops. Based on your own vision of NFTs, can you elaborate how you see NFTs playing a role in DeFi in general beyond just collectibles?
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting with regards to NFTs is the capability of having it be a representation of various financial instruments or products or things like maybe a mortgage to a home or titles or representation of real world assets. There's so many things that you can do with NFTs that haven't necessarily been something that's gone mainstream yet. It seems like the NFT ecosystem really dove into PFP pictures and art and a lot of native Web3 type use cases. And what I really want to see is the NFT ecosystem just across Web3 in general continue to evolve and start using the underlying standards and technology of NFTs for some more mainstream financial type use cases. And we're seeing things like using NFTs as like a representation of liquidity that's provided to
Yeah,
various
yeah.
pools, at least on Hedera, for example, for Saucer Swap. They do an issuance of an NFT where when you provide liquidity to an Ichi auto pool, you receive an NFT that sort of represents your share in that pool, and that changes over time given the nature of auto pools. I think there's a lot more that the NFT ecosystem really can start to embark on with regards to utility. And I'm excited to see what that looks like. One thing that I've always thought would be an amazing use case for NFTs, and this is a little bit outside the realm of decentralized finance, is using it for books.
Wow.
Today, digital books, it's a very centralized process. You go to like your Amazon bookstore, like Kindle bookstore, purchase a book, it's on your device, it's DRM licensing, but you can't share that book with someone, you can't lend it, you can't resell it. Being able to have the tangible properties of a physical book in a digital environment would be pretty amazing. And NFTs would unlock that capability and purchase a book, you're done reading it. I'd love to be able to just resell that book on an open market for people that are interested in. And even potentially benefits publishers. They could receive a royalty on every sale, or maybe if a book is lent out, they receive some type of royalty for that. In general, I feel like the NFT space is still very like nascent, as big as it had gotten, especially the past like 4 years. But there's a lot more that I think is should be coming along for that ecosystem.
Yeah, man, that's an interesting thought about the book. So, my response to that would be because I love exploring the nascent technology that is NFTs, and I am 100% on board with you. I don't think it has been explored anywhere near enough what's possible. I think part of it is because TradFi just aren't. They're just not moving fast enough in terms of regulation and compliance and actually making that accessible. But that's another. But the book idea, I'd never heard that before. Obviously, I've heard it in music and the distribution of music rights and artist rights and a portion of copyright fees, etc. My only challenge with the books one is not be superfluous. Like the whole thing about digital is, especially with the book, is it can be copied infinite amount of times without really using much data or space in a tangible setting. And the publisher and the author, they get their fees directly from the marketplace itself. So there's really no point in lending it on or passing it on. I'm just thinking out loud here. Is there a response to that? Am I thinking too Web 2ish here?
So I think if I'm understanding, you're saying that it's in the interest of the publisher to be able to sell the book to individuals directly, and it's always the one-to-one relationship. Whereas if you all of a sudden have the capability as holder or owner of the book being able to lend it or resell it is not in the interest of the publisher.
In a way, but I think it's not so much about the interest of the publisher and the author. It's more the point. What's the point of reselling a book when the digital version is going to be the exact same price as the original version that you bought on Amazon, say? So there'd be no real reason for me to pass it on, besides the fact that maybe I could make a bit of money back on the asset that I've purchased. Is there a
Yeah,
point to it?
that would be the case. Yeah, no, I think being able to make a little bit of money back on the asset itself is definitely of interest for people. If you're done with a book and you want to be able to resell it, you can do so with physical copies today. So I think anything that you can do in the physical world that you can bring into the digital world, whatever the utility is, it seems there's always value in that when you can apply that rule.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, and I agree with you. Okay, yeah, I've never actually heard the case for books as NFTs. Let's hope that that gets explored, and hopefully someone's watching or listening, and they actually go, "Hey, we're going to build something like that." What about your NFTs? Tell us a little bit about how they will be utilized in the Bonzo Finance ecosystem.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the NFTs have a few different utility components to them. The first one is an airdrop of some Bonzo tokens as part of capturing that sort of wide distribution of our native protocol token to a number of people. The second is a community-focused utility where there's roles in Discord that you get for holding, depending on the tier of NFT that you have, having a role that's accessible within Discord, access to a faucet to be able to earn points and tokens as well. So holding that NFT gets you that. And then I think the biggest thing is there's a points multiplier associated with holding these different NFTs across various tiers. So the lowest tier NFT, you receive a 1.1x points multiplier. The next one up is 1.2x, then 1.3x, and 1.5x. And what the points multiplier does is Bonzo Finance is operating a points program similar to Camino Finance, Margin Fi, Layer Zero. These points programs have become pretty prolific across the space. And as an early supporter of the project and NFT holder, if you're supplying assets to the protocol or borrowing assets from the protocol, you're earning points. And if you're holding the NFT, you receive a multiplier on those points, depending on the highest tier of NFT that's being held. So I think it's a cool way to be able to give back to early supporters of the project and the community, and also creates this interesting level of utility for this NFT offering that we have.
Are those NFTs, are there a couple available on Hedera Marketplace where users could go check them out and actually buy some now if they wanted to, or are all your early NFT holders holding on?
We've seen some pop up in marketplaces. So on Hedera, the largest marketplace by volume is called Centex. And if you go to Centex and check out the Bonzo Collectibles creators section, all four of the NFTs are available there for buying and selling. Anybody can go in and purchase those and be able to utilize that for when the protocol goes live. And still figuring out, let's say we continue forward on this path with regards to a Supra expansion or another network expansion, figuring out the details still with regards to how we want to approach NFTs and points, or maybe a new mechanism entirely, depending on the ecosystem. We want to do our best to understand the needs of the ecosystem and its users first, and build a strong relationship and trust with them. And then from there, being able to get creative with regards to how we want to engage these users and build trust with them. And each network's different, each ecosystem's different. There's different geographies also, which sort of play a factor in this. And it's just a lot of learning and education and understanding.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about this industry as well. It's always evolving and moving so fast that founders are adapting and reconstructing and reconfiguring their vision as they build out as well. Brady, we are fast running out of time here, man. I don't want to keep you much longer. This has been such a great conversation. I've loved hearing about what you guys are up to and what the plans are. Final comments from you guys. What's on the roadmap just before the end of the year? What are you most excited about?
Yeah, so our mainnet launch on Hedera is coming up now within the next couple weeks. So we're really excited about that. The point system goes live for season one. There's various token and liquidity incentives that are going live as well. Continue trying to foster a really strong community for the protocol. So there's a lot of excitement with regards to that on the Hedera side, and we're really focused on making sure that that Hedera deployment is successful. And then in the midst of that, exploration of Supra. We're excited about Supra's EVM on testnet going live and being able to deploy some test contracts there and check things out and understand how everything works. And then following along that path, meeting the Supra community, getting involved in as many different types of events and engagements as we can, and really trying to understand the users as best as possible. We see that as just really important and hope to continue along that
Can't
path.
wait to see you on Supra and definitely exploring our testnet for sure. Before you, of course, have a lot to focus on right now with regards to your own mainnet launch on Hedera. We don't expect too much right this moment, but can't wait to see your progress within the Supra ecosystem. Where can people find out more about you guys? What are the Twitter handles? What are the website handles? And where can people read more about Bonzo Finance?
Yeah, so you can visit our website at bonzo.finance. All of the links to our socials are on that page right at the top. There is the testnet instance of Bonzo Finance on the Hedera network that is available as well to check out and try. Documentation with all of the details is at docs.bonzo.finance. And then our Twitter handle is x.com/bonzo_finance.
Awesome. Pretty simple, very easy. Check it out, guys. This has been a fantastic conversation with Brady Gentile, CEO and co-founder of Bonzo Finance Labs. Brady, thank you so much for joining us and good luck, man.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.